Imagine spending 14 years and over £1 billion to achieve absolutely nothing. That's not a nightmare. That's Stan Kroenke's actual record at Arsenal. While Manchester City collected Premier League titles like Pokemon cards, Arsenal collected participation certificates and higher ticket prices. Stan Kroenke was born on July 29, 1947, made his fortune in real estate development, married Ann Walton, the Walmart heiress, and suddenly had more money than several small countries. But here's the clever bit. Kroenke leveraged his marriage to buy land in areas where Walmart planned to expand, essentially getting insider information on America's retail empire. This real estate goldmine funded his sports ventures, proving that sometimes the best business strategy is marrying the right person. Classic American dream: work hard, marry well, use family connections to buy sports teams. Before destroying Arsenal's title hopes, Kroenke spent decades perfecting the art of disappointing fans across multiple American sports. He owns the Los Angeles Rams, Denver Nuggets, Colorado Avalanche, and Colorado Rapids. His crowning achievement? Moving the Rams from St. Louis to Los Angeles, breaking the hearts of an entire city while pocketing $1 billion relocation fee. Nothing says I care about fans like ripping their team away for a better tax deal. Now here's the kicker. Kroenke's American teams have actually started winning recently. The Rams won Super Bowl 56 in 2022. The Nuggets claimed their first NBA championship in 2023, and the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup in 2022. Sounds impressive, right? Except it only took him over 2 decades of ownership to figure out that spending money on talent occasionally helps win trophies. The Nuggets waited 47 years for their first championship under his watch, while Rams fans endured years of mediocrity before their recent success. But Kroenke's masterpiece of sporting mediocrity would come at Arsenal, where he'd prove that you can take the American out of America, but you can't take the American franchise mentality out of the American. Kroenke first bought into Arsenal in 2007, promising fans he was a long-term investor who understood the club's values. He pledged never to move Arsenal, which was reassuring given his track record, and committed to maintaining the club's traditions. Spoiler alert, he kept exactly one of those promises. The takeover battle with Alisher Usmanov was like watching 2 billionaires fight over who gets to disappoint Arsenal fans more efficiently. Usmanov wanted to spend big on players. Kroenke wanted to spend big on himself. Arsenal fans got the worst of both worlds: no investment and no hope. By 2011, Kroenke owned Arsenal outright and immediately implemented his tried and tested American formula: raise prices, lower expectations, count money. Ticket prices at the Emirates became the highest in world football. Arsenal supporters were paying champagne prices to watch Prosecco football. The genius of Kroenke's strategy was turning Arsenal fans into the world's most expensive optimists. Every summer, he'd promise investment while selling the club's best players: Cesc Fabregas, Robin van Persie, Samir Nasri, all gone to clubs with actual ambition. Arsenal became football's equivalent of a feeder club, except they were feeding teams that were supposedly their rivals. Kroenke's first masterstroke was hiring Ivan Gazidis as CEO, a man whose primary qualification was understanding American sports business models. Gazidis specialized in corporate speak that could make relegation sound like a strategic repositioning. Together, they turned Arsenal into a perfectly run business that happened to occasionally play football. Kroenke's relationship with Arsene Wenger perfectly captured his approach. Wenger was the ideal manager for Kroenke, brilliant enough to keep Arsenal competitive, cheap enough to never demand serious investment. For years, Wenger performed miracles with bargain basement budgets, while Kroenke collected Champions League revenue without Champions League ambition. Arsenal's transfer policy under Kroenke reads like a masterclass in false economy. They'd spend £35 million on decent players, while their rivals spent £50 million on great ones. The difference between mediocrity and excellence became Arsenal's defining characteristic. Meanwhile, Kroenke was extracting millions in consultancy fees through his company KSE UK. He was literally paying himself to own Arsenal, which is like charging your own family rent for visiting your house. The man had turned club ownership into a subscription service. The FA Cup wins provided temporary relief, but even those victories highlighted the problem. Arsenal could win domestic cups because they faced weaker opposition, but consistently failed against Europe's elite. They'd become cup specialists, and league also rans. Wenger's departure in 2018 should have marked a new era, but Kroenke's approach remained unchanged. Unai Emery arrived with promises of change, then was given roughly the same budget as Wenger and expected different results. That's the definition of insanity, but apparently also Kroenke's business model. The Emery experiment collapsed spectacularly, proving that changing managers without changing ambition achieves nothing. Arsenal went from boring but effective under Wenger to chaotic and ineffective under Emery. Progress. Mikel Arteta's appointment finally brought some hope. mainly because he was young enough to potentially outlast Kroenke's ownership. Arteta preached about returning Arsenal to their glory days while working with the same constraints that had prevented glory for over a decade. The Super League fiasco in 2021 perfectly encapsulated Kroenke's vision for Arsenal. He wanted guaranteed revenue without the inconvenience of actual competition. When fans protested outside the Emirates, Kroenke discovered that European supporters are less passive than American sports fans who'll watch their teams relocate for better parking. Kroenke's Arsenal tenure is defined by one stunning statistic: 0 Premier League titles, 0 Champions League titles, 0 Europa League titles. In 14 years of ownership, Arsenal's biggest achievements have been qualifying for the Champions League and finishing above Tottenham. For a club that calls itself the Arsenal, that's like McDonald's being proud of their salads. The tragic irony is that Arsenal generates enough revenue to compete with anyone. The Emirates Stadium, commercial deals, and global fan base provide resources that most clubs can only dream of. But Kroenke treats Arsenal like a cash machine rather than a football club. Every summer brings the same charade. Arsenal are 2 or 3 players away from competing, except those players never arrive or arrive too late to make a difference. It's Charlie Brown and the football, but with more expensive tickets. Kroenke's legacy at Arsenal is turning one of England's greatest clubs into a case study in how not to run a football team. He's proved that you can have everything: money, history, facilities, fans, and still achieve absolutely nothing if your ambition is smaller than your profit margins.